5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, ignition, liftoff.
You're listening to Relentless. This is the show for high performers who are driven and committed to being at their best. Nick Peterson and Jonathan Montgomery, co-founders of Relentless Dietetics, are your hosts.
Welcome to the Relentless Podcast. I'm Nick Peterson, hanging out again today with Jonathan Montgomery.
What is up?
And the Dr. Trevor Cashy.
Hello.
As per usual, we're here to discuss getting a little bit better every day. Now, if you didn't hear the last episode, we really got into the importance of coaching and mentorship and even the mastermind hive mindset, and really using those environments, using those people and those resources to develop skill sets so you become an asset yourself. It is the development of skill sets and becoming an asset, in my opinion, that is really the big benefit of having mentors, coaches, and people you trust. The payoff is not so much getting the result in the short term. It's not hiring a coach for 12 weeks, doing what they say, and then kind of hitting a wall when they walk away. The big benefit is a good group, a good mentor, a good coach is going to help you become a certain type of person and going to help you think a certain way. Something that Trevor's really done, I think, for Jonathan and I is just change the way we think about things. So I think we'll take the time and try and get through today, run through some concepts that you need to learn and recognize as you go into a coaching and mentor or a group mastermind environment. The first one, being able to recognize a one-off time expenditure versus spending time building a skill set or an asset.
Yeah, this one's a big one for me, and it's something I had to realize is the fact that you only have so many hours in a week. It's actually the same 168 that all of us have. And while the desire to simply spend more time, throw more hours at a project or an endeavor or on your internet research or whatever it may be, it seems logical. But it's only going to be effective for so long until it's not. And then what are you left with? If continually investing more time stops providing the desired response and the rate of change you're looking for, what's next? Can you simply keep adding hours? In our business, we kind of see this a lot with people we work with wanting to go from literally zero activity, completely sedentary individuals to immediately thinking they want to jump in hitting 2-a-day training sessions, 5 days a week with a few brisk 10-mile training runs on the weekend. What happens when that stops working out? Can you simply will your way through a 3rd session a day or add an 8th day of training? It just doesn't work that way. What you have to do here is ask yourself and be really objective when you do it is how many times do you think you can increase your output and realistically expect an equal return? How many times can you just double down, put twice the amount of effort into something and get a 2x return on that effort? At some point, and rather rapidly, once you get past the beginning stages of an endeavor, the law of diminishing returns is going to come into play. And without looking at compounding assets and investing in new skills, you're simply going to be limited by the amount of effort you can exert and maintain. And that's something that's truly a finite resource and one which may not always be enough to get you where you want to be. And that's where I think, developing these skill sets and having these resources helps.
Yeah, and I think that leads right into point number 2, and that's having the capacity or the ability to recognize the difference between knowing what to do in a specific situation or how to get a specific result versus learning how to think, or more specifically, how to figure things out. What do you do when you can't work out any more days? What do you do when you can't take away any more food? The world is not terribly linear. It's not black and white. And a good mentor, a good coach is going to do pretty much what Trevor has done, I think, for both of us and help you cultivate the skills to think a certain way and figure things out in the real world where we live.
I'm going to be annoying and say that I totally think diminishing returns are still returns. As soon as you put as much effort as you do into something, you will hit that point, and being able to recognize that when you hit that point is also important. Because Absolutely. Everybody has great progress for indefinite amounts of time. The beginning, the middle stages of any new endeavor progress is relatively accelerated, and then it does slow down. And then what that coach or support does help you figure out is, am I making bonehead decisions and not plugging the holes in my bucket, as Nick likes to say, or have I really just hit the phase of, now I really do have to double down if I want to keep getting returns on what I'm doing?
That's one of the things that's really effective about having that outside resource is now, instead of having to double your effort to get a quarter return, you can 1x your effort and get a 2 times return when you're in the right area and the right avenue with the right skills. No, 100% agree with that.
Yeah. I just got to be annoying.
What would life be if you weren't, my friend?
Right?
Knowing what to do, as Jonathan has pointed out before, and I'll let him expand on this, knowing what to do, it may work in a linear fashion forever if you live in a bubble. And the fact is we don't.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if this, then that, it's a pretty effective approach. You know, it works great in a vacuum where every option fits neatly into the algorithm and is listed on the flowchart. That's the whole ideal, optimal scenario you hear everyone talk about. If everything is perfect, the stars are aligned, life actually is full of rainbows and unicorns for you, then this should work. But the reality is, you know, life, at least for most of us, is that we just don't exist in a vacuum, and rarely is anything considered perfect. External stressors are numerous. You know, you're going to get sick. You're going to have a personal crisis, go on a vacation, get a flat tire. Family obligations tend to pop up all the time. There's always a birthday. There's always a Tuesday. If you name it, it'll happen, and life is going to throw you curves. The best illustration of this, you know, that I can recall is when Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And he's 100% right. You know, those moments are when you need a skill set and not just a set of instructions if you want to succeed. When things don't go according to plan, the solution isn't as obvious as you need it to be, the ability to adapt and overcome becomes key. And from a practical perspective, there's a key difference to me between a program and a coach. A one-off plan versus a system that's designed for you and adjusted with you as you change and grow, one in which over time you develop the skills and acquire assets that you need to analyze, adjust, recalibrate, and continue moving forward. It's a huge difference than just being told what to do.
Yeah. I'm going to throw out my favorite real world example, and that is Trevor, Dr. Kashi here. If you operate if this, then that, if that's your set of instructions, that is a lot of stuff to memorize. Like, you got to pretty much keep everything in your memory bank, every situation. And then you have Trevor, who, sorry, Trevor, I don't think you have any memory at all, but an incredible skill set to reason. So Trevor's memory bank is like completely open to learn new stuff. And when something happens, he has the skill set to reason really quickly given the context and come up with the best possible solution at the time, which is completely different than trying to memorize. If somebody says this, I say this. If somebody does this with their left hand, I do this. Trevor's probably the best example of somebody that just figures things out because of the skill set that he's really mastered.
I think that's so funny you say that. I remember when we hung out and you would say something and be like, oh, that sounds so cool. I totally identify with it. And I guess it's something that I had said earlier on and had no idea at all. But I really identified with the person you were talking about.
We thought about, for your birthday, we were going to get just all of your quotes. And it was going to be like reading a book that really resonated. And you would have no idea it was your own quotes.
Yeah, that would not surprise me in the slightest. There are two ways to think about the decision-making processes in the business we're in, as Jonathan would say. I like that phrase. There's top-down, and there is bottom-up. So when I went through my clinical schooling, it is very much top-down. It is, what do I see, and how do I work backwards? And bottom up is what I learned really through smoke and fire, quite literally, in like the laboratory, another form of, training to learn how to set up experiments. And that is, what do I know fundamentally and how do I work forward? And what I noticed is that if I have a strong grasp of fundamental concepts, you can get to the end on your own and you know whether or not something makes sense on a fundamental level. This is why people panic when they have a headache and go to WebMD and think they have a brain tumor versus, did I drink enough water today? Because that's something fundamental. That's kind of the difference. It's a ridiculous example, but they happen every day. So I actually don't know if it's too ridiculous or not. But the whole bottom-up approach is essentially you have a strong grasp of fundamental concepts, and then you can make decisions along the way knowing that they are grounded in reason and make sense versus this person did it this way, I'm going to try that. Or that person did it this way, I'm going to try this. Or this works for that person, so it must work for me. And the other way, going bottom up, really allows you, if you have a paradigm, that a coach would set up for you, essentially, they set up the fence and you wander in it. And you know whether you're jumping shark or not if you have a decent grasp of the fundamentals.
I think you just kind of really nailed it on the head right there when it comes to cultivating a skill set. That is your basis of fundamentals. That is your foundation knowledge from which you can continue to operate. It's not that somebody can't get a headache and go to the internet and accumulate every single bit of information to distill it down into the fact that they possibly were dehydrated. But that's not going to be nearly as sexy as just reading brain tumor and then jumping off a cliff. And I think that's the problem when you try to do it yourself is you're going to make a lot of mistakes before you get that foundation right to reason.
Making decisions grounded in the fundamentals, which again, you're going to expedite the process by having a good coach, a good mentor. Like Trevor said, they kind of put the fence up. In a previous episode, we talked about being bumpers in the bowling alley, all the same kind of idea. But when you learn how to make decisions grounded in the fundamentals, you can start recognizing, and this is point 3, is you start recognizing the difficult things, the things that aren't so black and white. That would be not so much making the right decision versus the wrong one, but making the tough decision when they're both wrong. What do you do? It's easy to build people up. What happens when those people start making unrealistic demands, right? There's no formula for that. There's no black and white. And developing the skill set and making decisions grounded in the fundamentals helps you identify and handle the hard things, the things that aren't so black and white. So what a mentor or a coach or a good program even is going to do is help you develop the skill set of not making the right decision versus the wrong one when it's obvious, but making the best decision for yourself when the right one is not super apparent.
Yeah, I mean, let's be completely honest. Literally everyone knows the right thing to do. I mean, you want to lose weight? It's simple. You just have to eat less and move more. It's a lot of wealth accumulation. You want to be rich? Great. You just got to save your money and invest it wisely. I mean, it's super easy, right? Or is it? I mean, honestly, if it were truly that easy, then the world would be full of shredded, successful, happy, wealthy individuals all choosing broccoli instead of cake as their default dessert option. But that's just not the world we tend to live in. So there must be something more than simply always choosing the right thing. And this is where we find that knowledge really isn't the issue, but clarity on how to proceed and the skills to take action are, especially when the right thing, right, isn't always a viable option when looked at in conjunction with the rest of your life as a whole. Broccoli is not and never will be cake. And it probably won't make anyone happy on their birthday. So you got to do yourself a favor and don't try to slip that one by. You're going to have to try to come up with the best decision possible, not just the right one all the time. And that's where things get a little cloudy, and this additional skill set and that foundation helps.
The right decision always sounds great on paper. And sometimes it's just not super convenient. Sometimes you just don't want to do anything. And that's where having someone there is so great to tie it back into the third eye or the 1,000-foot view or whatever your favorite combination of words is to describe that metaphor, is that there's intentions and there's interventions. And sometimes the gap between those two things is pretty damn big.
Yeah, pretty large.
Yeah, and it really is a skill set to find that middle ground, because people have attached so much morality to like, this is good, this is bad, and they don't even bother trying to operate. There's all this gray area in the middle that might just be perfect for them. And that's where developing the skill set helps you identify, like, again, how to think, not what to do. But given the situation, where in this gray area do I fall?
How to operate within the context of your situation.
I think that's the problem too with a lot of absolutes is, we all know the right thing, if this, then that. But when you have 47, if this is raining down, the singular then that may conflict with others. And I think that's exactly where we're talking about a gray area or whatever it may be is living in a vacuum in a perfect world. It doesn't exist. Those decisions aren't always, taken in context with the rest of your life. And I think that's a big thing.
I think this is the start of a rap song, like raining then this is.
That'll be our next endeavor.
Yeah.
Everybody have their rap name figured out?
Yes.
Don't
well, if
give it
we
away.
do, then we can make a rap album.
Algorithm for the win.
Yes.
If you're ready to get the body you desire without depriving yourself of the foods you enjoy, download your free diet playbook now at www.relentlesspodcast.com.
So we talked about the gray area. We talked about operating within context. Cool. So that's going to bring us around to point 4. Which is identifying a coach or a mentor that is going to teach you how to fish, so to speak. They're going to transfer the skill set to you, show you how to identify where you fall in that gray area, and teach you how to navigate certain situations. Again, it's more about learning how to think versus knowing exactly what to do.
Yeah, we see this quite a bit with food. People are looking to hire a meal prep service instead of learning how to cook, or they simply want to follow a meal plan. Tell me what to eat instead of learning how to create a menu of their own or fend for themselves. And, this is a viable option, and it works great until you leave the Tupperware on the roof of your car, drive down the road, and all of a sudden your tuna and twigs end up in the dirt. Or you know what? There's a backlog with your prep service from everyone else wanting to utilize a quick fix and not take any accountability for themselves, and they can't get your meals delivered until next Tuesday, and you're stuck for the week. Then what do you do? And that's why it's just a little bit better sometimes to know how to fish and not just wait for a fish to be given to you. Literally in this context, sometimes you got to take care of yourself if you really want to have the skill sets to be able to do it for the long term.
I would also like to add too that if you do have a so-called grasp on fundamental concepts like cooking, that when you do choose to utilize a food preparation service, it does give you a better idea of, am I getting the right amounts? Is this high quality food? Can I make something better than this? Is it really saving me time? Is it really saving me money or not? Which it isn't. Having a grasp of these fundamental contexts, like Jonathan says, if you do go a route where you do need to use another service, then you have the capability to determine the value and quality of what you're getting, which I also think is super important, because maybe you need one of your meals instead of 4, and then you know how to decide that this is how I operate within that gray area. Maybe cooking 5 times a day isn't realistic. Maybe cooking once every 3 days is, and then I get 1 meal a day delivered. Whatever the case may be, if you know what the heck you're doing, then you can see the value of the other things that are around you. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. Having the ability from the foundational knowledge or the skill set in this context to make an informed decision is fantastic, because then you're truly capable of making the best decision for you when considering all the variables. Does it save time? Does it save money? Does it taste better? Does it fit my lifestyle? If you don't know what you're capable of contributing and how to take care of yourself, you have no way of knowing. You're just kind of stuck, nimbly bimbly, with the winds of change around you. Like you said, your meal prep service gets backed up. How are you going to feed yourself? That's when people have issues executing.
My favorite meal prep service is Chick-fil-A.
It's not a bad one. They've been making TV dinners for a long time. I don't understand this whole meal prep rage. It's, you put it in the microwave. It's prepped for you.
But it's not in plastic.
That's true.
That is the key. All right, so we'll roll to point number 5 here, and that is really helping you identify what kind of coaching and mentorship services you're going to run into and what the benefits are. The first is DIY, do it yourself. We have all tried that, I think. It's not super efficient. Some may be content with it. If you really enjoy the process and not so concerned about the results, you just want to figure things out, maybe doing it yourself is the best route to take. But it's self-limiting, and the returns become diminished as you kind of get into unknown territory, and you have to spend a lot of time figuring out what feedback is necessary, what does it mean for yourself. Do it yourself is probably going to be the longest journey. There is done for you. This is a meal prep service. This is give somebody money, they do it for you. You do not develop the skill sets. And like Jonathan said, if you drop your Tupperware in the dirt, you're in trouble. Feedback is minimal. And generally done for you is going to be pretty heavy in abstract theory, not so heavy in the practical application for you in your life. Done for you is great, again, if you live in a vacuum. You may end up with the results you want. You probably will not be able to replicate it on your own, which kind of marries you to whatever service you're using, as long as you want to maintain your results. Then there's done with you. And this is my personal favorite. Essentially, you make an agreement and your coach, your mentor, or the service provider helps you figure out your individual issues, your needs, and how to deal with them. This is helping you operate in your gray area and learning how to kind of navigate the whole process. Done with you also, because of the feedback, the constant feedback, and the one-on-one, can help you develop the skill sets to think a certain way and kind of handle situations on your own. The frame shift, for example, is done with you. Right? It's not here's your 12 weeks of food delivered to your doorstep. It's not here's a piece of paper with 12 weeks of meals printed out for you. Jonathan, Trevor, the team are working with you directly to help you develop a skill set that you can use for the rest of your life.
I want to point out a couple of things. I do like the points you make. There's a couple of things that popped into the noggin when you were speaking. And one is that just to be the contrarian I am, like I am in this episode because I'm supposed to be annoying, at least I feel like it sometimes, is that the do-it-yourself portion is not inherently bad. And I think this is something akin to a hobby, right? You have something you like to do, and solving these problems gets you off. So it's not a means to an end. You're going into this project knowing it's going to take forever, knowing you're going to step in potholes, and knowing that eventually there is light at the end of the tunnel, but that is what you like doing, is that you're putting an hour or 2 or 3 a day into this project. You know that it's not as efficient as it could be, but that's fun for you, right? And in the context of do it yourself, there are a couple of dangers associated with that, because if you aren't an expert in what you are discussing with whoever is providing this service for you in the do it, I'm getting all my terms mixed up here. The done for you service, right, is that you are a non-expert and you are probably talking with an expert who's providing the service for you, okay? And the inherent issue with that is that an expert will do exactly what you tell them. And if you don't know what you want, you're probably not going to get what you think you're asking for, because they will do exactly what you tell them to do and how you tell them to do it, and you're going to get your final product, and you are not going to like it because you did not give them the right directions. That is all I have to say about that.
I think you hit a couple really solid points there. When it comes to do it yourself in the context of a hobby, whether you want to apply the 10,000 hours to mastery or whatever it is concept you want to talk about when it comes to actually developing a skill or proficiency in a subject matter. DIY, if it's a hobby, if it gets your rocks off, if you enjoy it and you like chipping away at it, whether it's drawing or painting, in the context of hobbies, I know that we've taken up. Yeah, absolutely. It can be a lot of, catharsis and provide a lot of enjoyment. But at the same time, you have to recognize you're not going to make that progress at the rate you could have if you had some expert guidance, and you may develop some bad habits along the way. I mean, from a food context, we all pretty much know how well DIY worked, at least for me anyway. It got me to my before photo, and what got a lot of us to the point we want to change. And as Trevor, you said, it doesn't mean you can't make progress from where you start, but you may find it hard to keep moving forward and keep making objective decisions if things stop working, or when the time comes that you need to make decisions that you may not feel like making. That's when DIY can run into some problems. And like you pointed out too, done for you works great if you know what you want. If you know what to ask the expert. From a food context, if you're able to have a personal chef follow you around and slap the cupcakes out of your hand when you're having one too many, great, have at it. Or on the flip side, if you feel like executing a rigid meal plan and being told what you can eat for the rest of your life, it can be extremely effective. But like we kind of mentioned before, this type of restriction and limited choices works well right up until you want to go out to eat, have some variety, take a cruise, or make a change in your food sources. And that's when they start to fall apart, because you don't have the skill set and you don't have the expertise to make those changes. You're kind of tied to that expert to make them for you. But like as Nick mentioned, done with you is kind of a different approach. And this really is the gold standard, kind of teach someone how to fish in the context of balancing their day, planning their own meals, adjusting their sources and choices within parameters, learning how to make decisions in line with your goals, while eating in or dieting out, or all of these things. They all contribute to a skill set that kind of gives you the freedom to solve your own problems, adapt to changes, call an audible, enjoy life, and to me, it kind of adds up to something that the rigid structure of a one size fits all or done for you plan can't offer. And that's just being an increased quality of life, knowing that whatever situation you get into, you've got the ability to take care of yourself. And to me, that freedom is priceless.
Yeah, Trevor at our last retreat said something that I think a lot of light bulbs went on in the room, is that nobody has a weight loss problem. Right? People are approaching things thinking they have a weight loss problem. So this done for you service is going to get me to where I want to be. And that may be true. But like Trevor said, we don't really have a weight loss problem. That part's easy. We have a maintenance problem. So when we're looking at services or coaching or whatever, where do we want to put our effort? What skill sets do we want to develop? It needs to be something that is going to facilitate maintenance, right? So a done for you, like a meal delivery service, may get you to where you want to be. But in order to maintain that and sustain the results, you're married to that done for you product the rest of your life, which is perfectly fine. But again, I've heard Jonathan say before, when you go get a haircut, you got to keep going and paying for the haircut. And that's okay. You just have to realize that's what you're marrying yourself to.
Yeah, that example always kind of makes me giggle, and it really drives it home for me. When's the last time you went in to get a haircut and asked your barber or your stylist, hey, when do I get to stop coming back and my hair stay the same? And it just doesn't work that way. It's a service. If you want your hair to be cut, you got to go get it cut. And this is another good example too, because when it comes to haircuts, outside of shaving your own head, a DIY haircut is not the easiest thing to do. And, the thing is outside of the 1 to 2 people that may get it right, you're going to find 98 or 99 that definitely aren't getting it right. And I know I've been there, and I've done that. In high school, I cut my own hair, not so proud of that. But when your hair is purple and green, people really aren't concerned with the quality of your haircut. So you can get by with a whole lot more. But, outside of that French, you can kind of always pick out the people that are hitting up a DIY haircut in a lineup. Something just doesn't look right. And that's kind of similar with a lot of DIY endeavors. For every person that makes incredible progress for the rest of their life on a DIY diet, you can probably pick out the rest of the people who are dieting on their own and not doing so well just by taking a look around next time you hit the local food court, go to Disney, or hit up the Walmart. You can kind of see how DIY works. And I think it's just one of those things. If you want a done for you service, understand you're married to it. Like getting your lawn mowed, you don't ask the guy mowing your lawn, hey, when's my grass going to stop growing? You just got to understand you got to keep paying him to hit that service, or you got to do it yourself. What do you want to do? It's up to you.
Yeah, and I think the cool thing about a done with you is that you do learn the skill. You do cultivate the skill. And you still have the option of getting it essentially done for you, right? You can say, hey, look, I know how to mow my lawn, but I'd rather you do it for me. And that's good to know. It's good for peace of mind. And it's good to know that your lawn's going to get mowed either way. You're not going to have a maintenance problem. All right. So we'll roll to point 6 real quick, wrap up with this. Learning to recognize when you do have an opportunity to create assets, build skill sets, develop resources, instead of repeating the same work, right? So ultimately you can buy yourself time later on down the road.
You want kind of a living document, or guide, so to speak, one that continues to evolve and changes as you and your goals evolve and as they change, and that's going to provide far more benefit than just being told what to do. Principles versus rules, progression, not perfection. Having the ability to reason through a problem is going to be reaching out and hoping to be given the right answer for you every time you have a question or want to improve. And that just takes that foundational knowledge and those skills to kind of work your way through it.
Yeah, I think you nailed it with developing principles. And that's one thing that working with Trevor over the years has helped tremendously, is that my decision making for myself becomes more and more streamlined. I have to hit the Facebook Messenger less often and say, hey, Trevor, what do I do in this situation? Because I'm developing these principles that make sense for me and my life. And over time, my principles change because I reflect and, oh, hey, I did this and this happened. And my decision making becomes more accurate and more streamlined, which just allows me to make more decisions of a higher quality in less time with more confidence. And that's really the power of building these skill sets, being grounded in really foundational stuff and becoming an asset, is getting more done on a higher level, more consistently, and building these skill sets and these assets are going to help you get to where you want to be.
Well, thanks for listening. And remember, don't be the guy that cuts your own hair, unless you're the guy that can cut your own hair and not look like the guy that cuts their own hair. Or you just don't really care how your hair looks. Either way, it's cool with us.
Yeah, but if you walk around looking goofy as shit, it's not our fault.
Okay, the returns on this episode have diminished.
Yeah, you're right. Just keep working on getting better every day. We're out.
You've been listening to the Relentless Podcast. Now, if you've enjoyed this episode and you want to keep getting a little bit better every day, do us a favor, head over to iTunes, subscribe, leave us an honest review, and be sure not to miss the next one.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.